I'm going to introduce real quick all the wonderful actors who are going to be helping us and the director through our show. And then we'll go ahead and get started with the historical introduction. But the playwright tonight is Jenifer Nee. Jenifer, if you turn on your camera briefly. She has previously premiered 8 plays with Plan B Theater Company in Salt Lake City. The Audacity, one of the first original plays to premiere and run online during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Weird Play, one of the 10 recipients nationwide of the inaugural Writers Alliance grant from the Dramatists Guild Foundation. Kingdom of Heaven, the first original musical in the company's history, created with composer and co-lyricist David Evanoff. The Scarlet Letter and Suffrage, which garnered back-to-back nominations for the American Theater Critics Association Steinberg Award for a Best New American Play produced outside of New York. Rough, which was the company's 4th annual free elementary school tour, and Wallace, co-written with playwright Deborah Freely, and Indivisible, a collaboration with 11 other playwrights. Jenifer is the first Asian American to receive a world premiere in Utah, and she is a member of the Dramatists Guild of America. We're super proud to have her here with us tonight, so please give her a little Zoom welcome round of applause. The director for the show tonight is Cheryl Cluff, who co-founded Plan B Theater Company in 1991 and has served as its managing director since 1995. She's designed sound for nearly every Plan B production since 2000, directed all 13 episodes of Radio Hour and KUER, and also directs one main stage Plan B production every season, most recently Camille Washington's Odamite. We're super lucky to have her here supporting the actors tonight, and she'll be reading from the stage directions as well during the performance. Our 2 actors today are April Fossen, whose Salt Lake City acting credits include Mercury, Bull Shark Attack, and Blackberry Winter with Salt Lake Acting Company. The Audacity pilot program and Suffrage, which is our show tonight from Plan B Theater Company, A Streetcar Named Desire from the Grand Theater, and Stage Kiss from Wasatch Theater Company, which got the Best Theater Performance City Weekly 2016. August, Osage County, Silver Summit, and Utah Rep. Love and Pussycat Productions 2019, Great Salt Lake Fringe Pick, and Titus Andronicus, Pinnacle Acting Company. Regional credits include work with Berkeley Repertory Theater and California Shakespeare Festival. April holds a bachelor's degree in theater arts from UC Berkeley, and we're super lucky to have her here with us tonight. And then last but not least, we have Sarah Young, and Sarah is thrilled to have the opportunity to tell the incredible story of Frances and Ruth again in this reading of Suffrage. A native of Salt Lake, Sarah has worked as both an actor and stage manager at many local theaters, including Plan B Theater, the Grand Theater, and Salt Lake Acting Company. Favorite roles include Sabina in The Skin of Our Teeth by the Grand Theater, Catherine in the Shining Lives, People Productions, and of course, Ruth and Suffrage by Plan B. Sarah is a graduate of the University of Utah Department of Theater and is currently finishing her master's degree in arts administration at Southern Utah University. And again, if you need closed captioning, click on the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen and click on that and set the subtitles on. And we'll have a short survey that'll show up once this is over, but we have a lot of the show to go. And then I'm gonna right now introduce our wonderful historian from Sunstone Magazine, and then we'll get this show on a road. Lindsay Hansen Park is the executive director of Sunstone Education Foundation and the host of the acclaimed Year of Polygamy podcast. She also co-hosts and produces the Sunstone Mormon History podcast. She currently writes for Patheos as well as other online publications. Her biography on the life and works of Juanita Brooks, published by Signature Books, is forthcoming, and she resides in Salt Lake City with her 3 children. We're super lucky to have all these amazing women with us here tonight. And Lindsay, when you're ready, please take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the Utah Department of Heritage Arts and the Utah Humanities and Plan B Theater. I love your plays, and as a lot of people know, Sunstone has published Jenifer Nee's play, a transcript of it with Sunstone. It's so good. If you haven't visited Plan B Theater, you need to do it. Some of the plays are truly life-changing and have affected my work. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my, I have a little slideshow to go with this, and I'll be in the corner talking. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of polygamy and how it sort of affects statehood, because anyone that follows me and listens to the podcast knows that I am always saying polygamy, it's everywhere, because it is. If you know anything about Utah, if you know anything about the West, how the West was shaped, it really is affected by Mormon polygamy. So I'm going to be talking a lot about Mormon history today, because you can't separate it from Utah statehood or the settling of the American West. And so I'm going to give an introduction, and then we're going to get into the play. But Utah is really known for its high population of Mormons, and has been for a long time. Well, Mormons have been known for nearly 2 centuries for their practice of polygamy. In fact, as a little Mormon girl, anywhere I would travel, they would, outside of Utah, they would say, "Oh, how many wives does your dad have? Ha ha ha." And I didn't even understand that until I started to understand the history more. But I'm just going to give an overview of kind of Mormon history for people who might not be familiar with it, and then we're going to get into how Mormon polygamy shaped statehood. So Mormonism really starts out in the 1830s on the East Coast, and it slowly migrates west. And that is due to a lot of things. Mormons kind of scared their neighbors wherever they went. They believed that they were building a kingdom of God, and they would do things that would alarm their neighbors. They would vote in block. They would, they would have control of the city. When they moved to Commerce, Illinois, they changed the name to Nauvoo, and Joseph Smith, the founder and prophet of the church, basically had all civil power there. He became mayor, and all of his people took over and really had power in Nauvoo. And so not only were they doing that, they were buying up all the land, they were changing the laws, they were putting in Mormon judges, and they had this secret practice of plural marriage that was starting to get out. Now, of course, the church at the time, Joseph Smith, was denying that polygamy was being practiced, but he ends up getting murdered, shot over, related to the practice of his secret marriages. We now know that he married at least 32 women in secret, including his wife, Emma Smith, and that led to his death. And after he dies, there's sort of this power vacuum for 2 years, and then a new man, Brigham Young, steps in and he takes over. And at this point, the American government, Missouri, Illinois, they're tired of Mormons. They want them gone. And so Mormons are sort of forced to go west. So what they do is they head west into what was then occupied Indian territory, that was supposed to be protected by the Indian Removal Act. And that doesn't work out. They don't get along. Their cattle eats up a lot of the crops that, that was reserved for the indigenous tribes that had been displaced there. So Mormons move into what would have been Mexican territory. And a lot of people don't realize that when Mormons left the East, they're leaving the United States and coming to Mexico. And it was really the first big, large immigration attempt on the United States to resettle areas that were already settled. When Mormon arrival in the Great Basin happened, this area was already settled by Shoshone and Ute and Paiute and Navajo and all these other indigenous bands, and Mormons come and arrive in the valley. And when they're here, they decide they're going to live their Mormonism in peace. And they're going to do, all of their practices that were strange, but they're going to do it by themselves. And so for a short time, Brigham Young toyed with the idea of making his own country, because of course, this is Mexican territory. There's a lot of talk in the United States about what to do with all this property. Things are moving around. There's treaties being passed and wars and things like that. And so Brigham Young maps out this area, and you can see it on here. It's called Deseret. Now you have to understand that Mormons really thought that they were building the kingdom of God. They thought Jesus Christ's return to the earth, his second coming, was imminent, and that it was their job to build this kingdom. So they build this kingdom, and Brigham Young maps out a really ambitious territory called Deseret, and you can see the borders. It's a lot bigger than Utah. And one of the first things he does in 1849 is he drafts a constitution for the territory of Deseret, giving it a provisional government. And the idea is, we are going to come in, we are going to have this constitution, and it's going to allow for polygamy, and it's also going to allow for leadership that is theocratic, which means Brigham Young is in charge of the Kingdom of God, and it's going to be run by the Mormon Council of 50, which was an organization that had previously been set up where Mormons believed the Council of 50 were going to help rule this Kingdom of God. So to them, civil rule and spiritual rule were the same. Now, of course, this doesn't go well with the Native Americans who are living in the area, and it doesn't go well with the federal government, who are worried about Mormon power. So to become a territory at the time, you needed about, I want to say it was like 66,000 people. And Brigham Young, at this time, they only have 15,000, which is still a lot of people that had migrated west with the Mormons, but it wasn't enough to be a territory. So the Mormons would try a bid at becoming a territory first, but then Brigham Young hears that California and I think New Mexico are going to become states, and he's like, no, I want to do that. I want statehood power. I have more power than being in a territory, because if I'm a territory, the federal government gets to appoint leaders, but if we're a state, then we get to vote in our own guys, and the federal government is hostile to us. We don't want to trust them, so we want to vote in our own people. Except for the Utah Constitution at the time didn't really provide for an electorate, because they didn't think that Mormons needed to vote. They were called by God. And so these things, when they start their first bid for statehood, don't go well with the government. The government's like, no, are you kidding? We're not going to give you all of this property. And of course, Brigham Young is determined. He is not one to be told no. And so this really starts to stand off with the government. And as you can see in this territory, it goes into California, and that's important in just a minute. But Brigham Young really at one time is toying with the idea of making this state of Deseret, this territory of Deseret, completely sustainable. They invent their own language, Deseret alphabet, which is here on the left, which is where Mormons believed that they could invent this language so that all the gathering of Israel, all the people with different languages could come and understand one language, and it was Deseret alphabet. And this is a Mormon coin that they use. They planned to have a whole entire Mormon economy that was completely self-sustaining. But it didn't work out that way, and Mormons realized they needed help from the outside. So they're making about 4 bids for statehood, and the federal government is shooting them down and trying to wrest power from Brigham Young. And these boundaries of Deseret start to shrink. And what happens is, in the Compromise of 1850, California ends up becoming a state. And what it does is it sandwiches in Utah territory into the Union. And so now they're stuck, and really their only option is statehood. And the government knows this. They know that that's the leverage that they have. So it starts this 2 decades of conflict with the United States government, what we call the Utah War. It led to a lot of conflict, including the violent conflict of Mountain Meadows Massacre, where these immigrants from Arkansas are passing through Utah on their way to California, and Mormons, so charged up, so suspicious of outsiders, so angry about federal encroachment, slaughter 120 innocent men, women, and children. And it was very, very dark. So the Mormons keep applying for statehood, keep getting shot down. The government keeps trying to bring in power, and they're unable to do it. Brigham Young had very loyal and obedient followers. So one of the strategies that the government employs is to appoint a territorial governor to the area, and to move the state capital from Salt Lake City, which is where Brigham Young lived. He lived right up, and it was concentrated Mormon power. They wanted to move the capital down to Fillmore. So you can see Fillmore on the map. It's in central Utah, and they send a federal appointee to be the territorial governor. And this is the first capital, which is still in Fillmore today, which you can go visit. It's really kind of a great place to visit. And that doesn't last very long at all. Mormons kind of ignore this. And eventually, through a lot of compromise, the government concedes and says, okay, Brigham Young, we'll let you be federal governor of the territory, and you'll have to listen to us. But of course, Brigham Young doesn't do that. And before they even send the guy to come from the East Coast to swear Brigham in officially, Brigham Young's already appointing judges without federal approval. He's appointing leaders and things like that. And you have to understand that anyone that knows Mormons now, Mormonism, Latter-day Saints now, knows that we have a sort of government system within our religious tradition. And we call those bishops' courts. And so bishops' courts were actually, at this time in history, used to run the territory. A bishop wasn't just a bishop of a congregation or a ward. He was bishop of the area, and a lot of his roles included doing temporal stuff, civil stuff. And so the government really functioned as a spiritual government and a physical one. And so Brigham Young was appointing leaders to rule the kingdom of God and the kingdom on earth. And the government didn't like this. They had other federal appointees in mind, and Brigham Young and the Mormons just completely ignored this. And there are stories of Mormons driving judges out of town, burning down their barns, burning down their property. It was not a safe place to be, and you had to be really brave to come and try to be in power in Mormon Utah. So it doesn't work. Wait, I'll come back to that. It doesn't work, and the government is frustrated. They don't know what to do, but they know that they still have statehood to hold over Brigham Young. And so in 1852, Brigham Young gets so confident with his power, so confident in his doctrine, that they decide no longer are they going to keep the practice of polygamy secret anymore. They'd been denying it since they were in Nauvoo, Illinois, and now it was time to live out and proud. And so they send Orson Pratt, who was a Mormon leader at the time, who was famous for writing pamphlets, to Washington, D.C. to sort of spread the good news about Mormonism and convince them that polygamy was a higher law of God and that everyone should practice it. And he eventually publishes the Seer, which was one of his pamphlets. And in the Seer, it was meant to be their PR campaign, but he really invited people to believe that Jesus was a polygamist, which was incredibly controversial, that the United States should follow the Mormons, follow their lead. They had the truth, and that celestial marriage or polygamy was God's law. There's a lot of discourses and talks at the time about monogamy being the reason why everything is wrong in the world. Mormons really thought monogamy was bad. And in fact, they went so far as to say that if you were going to be a Mormon leader from bishop on up, you had to be a polygamist. And the 1860s happen in Mormonism, and it's a huge thing called the Mormon Reformation. And that's really when most of the plural marriages happen, because Mormons are really ramping this up. But of course, this doesn't help them get statehood. This only makes things worse for them. And Brigham Young starts to get known as this rogue leader, this rogue, pervert over in Utah that is doing all of these terrible things. Women are leaving the territory. They're running away with soldiers because, it was hard to live in frontier Utah. It was very poor, very barren, very rough. So women are leaving with soldiers. They're writing exposés about it. And the whole country has started getting charged up on these horrors of polygamy. Look at these men enslaving these women over in Utah. We need to do something about it. And here are some, anti-Mormon cartoons depicting polygamy. There's a lot of these. But basically what you need to know is that at the same time that the Mormons are trying to gain power, the Republican Party is trying to gain power too. And they're dealing with a lot of issues in the Union. Slavery is one of them. And Mormon polygamy was such a sensational topic, they decide that the Republican Party is going to add this to their platform to help consolidate their power. So they link polygamy and slavery, transatlantic slavery, together as sort of the twin relics of barbarism. And they say, you know what, we're going to root this out. We're going to handle this Brigham Young guy. And so what they do is they enact a series of acts and laws to crack down on polygamy. The first one was the Moral Bigamy Act, which basically said no Mormon could hold office, no polygamist could hold office. That didn't do anything. And so in the 1880s, they enact what was called the Edmunds Act. And that was a little stronger. It made polygamy a felony. And it really sort of threatened Mormon polygamists and said that we're going to take away your power if you do this. Of course, that doesn't really work either. And so the government is frustrated because they're sending in people to come in and try to do anything they can to get the influence away. And these acts aren't working. The government doesn't have the resources all over this wide territory to bust polygamists or cohabitators. And Brigham Young is still appointing Mormon judges who are ruling in Mormon interests. And at the same time, in the 1860s, the suffrage movement is happening on the East Coast, and activists are paying attention to this. They're trying to get the vote for women on the East Coast, and they're having a hard time. And so they notice this sort of scandal about polygamy, and they see an opportunity here. So they decide that they're going to test out women's suffrage in the territories in Utah, in Utah. And in Utah specifically, because not only was it known for having a lot of women because of polygamy, but it was also thought that they could give women the vote, and then women would vote away polygamy. They would free themselves with their own autonomy. And suffragists really used this to gain momentum. And so they give women the vote. And so, on February, I'm not going to spoil the play, but on February 12th, 1870, white women in Utah were given the right to vote. And Seraph Young, who we see here, cast the first vote in the territory along with 25 other women. And she's sometimes credited as the first American woman to vote, and that's actually not true. There was a woman in Massachusetts, Lydia Taft, who voted in the 1700s. And in New Jersey, anyone that could hold property could vote up until 1807, but she was technically the first one to vote in the territory. So, and we have Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton came to Utah and visited with Mormon women. There's a picture of Susan B. Anthony with Mormon women, and they're coming and trying to get this going. So the idea is, we are going to give Mormon women the vote. They're going to get rid of polygamy for you, Republicans, and then you can get your job done. But it doesn't happen that way. Mormon women vote for Mormon interests, and that backfired on people. That did not go how they wanted. And so the government really starts stepping up. They do a few polygamous raids. They come and start rounding up Mormon leaders, and these are the striped pajamas where Mormon leaders are put in prison. And to this day, it's still a source of pride to a lot of Mormons, and especially Mormon fundamentalists, that their grandfathers were put in prison for polygamy. And I have a grandfather that's put in prison for the same thing. So, a great grandfather. So now Mormons, this kind of starts what's called the Mormon Underground, where the federal government is finally starting to make headway. Now they are arresting these men. And so these men go into hiding. And what we call the Mormon Underground, they built secret passages in their mansions and in their buildings, and women would hide their pregnancies and claim and change their names. And at the same time, society is starting to, now the railroad is coming in and communication is coming into Utah. And so society and the world is coming in, and polygamy is starting to be seen as something the older generations did, less fashionable. So that really helps the Mormon Underground stay underground. Now, an important character, Brigham Young dies in 1877, and the guy that steps up after him is John Taylor. Now, John Taylor is this sort of stubborn polygamy ride or die guy. He's not going to give it up. And he was there when Joseph Smith was murdered. He was in the room. He's got so much clout, and he basically gives these sermons all the time that polygamy is never going to be taken from the earth. It will stand forever. Never should a year pass that, a polygamous baby shouldn't be born, and things like that. And he's really this hero of the Mormon Underground. Goes into hiding. He's hiding in secret compartments in the mansions downtown. He wears disguises. And he's faced with a challenge because the government really starts to step it up. So in 1886, he has a series of revelations called the Hidden Revelations. And this is really important to know because this is why Utah still has so many polygamists today. We just kind of think that they're out there doing that, but why? Why are there still Mormon polygamists today? There are thousands and thousands of people in Utah that still practice this. It's because in 1886, John Taylor has a revelation where there's a whole history here, but basically he claims he's visited by God and Joseph Smith, and he promises to never let polygamy leave the earth. And so it's kind of throwing down on the government. They're never going to give this up, and he's willing to die. He's seen other men die for this. He's willing to die for it too. So what are they supposed to do, right? Now the government ramps it up. They add an amendment to they add another bit to the Edmunds Act called the Edmunds-Tucker Act. And this really goes crazy because the Edmunds-Tucker Act, they say it gives teeth to the Edmunds Act. What it means is Mormons that are found practicing polygamy can't hold office, they can't vote, they can't be judges, they're disenfranchised as citizens, and worse, they're disenfranchising Mormon women. So any Mormon woman is going to lose the vote. So what they do is they basically take away the vote from Mormon women. They didn't vote how they wanted them to, and this was the consequence. And it's kind of unprecedented, and it seems like really bad for religious freedom in the United States. Imagine this, but they're saying that you can't be a polygamist and hold office. And the reason why they did that, it was strategic because Mormons at the time, like I said, you couldn't be in leadership in Mormonism unless you were a polygamist at this time. So they knew that by getting rid of polygamists, they were getting rid of Mormon power. So finally, John Taylor agrees to give it up. It's quite this controversial, there's this whole history where they're threatened. They've got so much federal pressure. In fact, it really comes to a head because of what was happening in Idaho. In Idaho in the 1880s, they disenfranchised all Mormons, which was about 1/4 of the population, and they gave them a loyalty oath to the government, asking them to disavow polygamy, and if they did that, they could vote. So you have these crazy stories of entire Mormon congregations or stakes getting excommunicated, going and voting, and then getting rebaptized, or disavowing Mormonism in court and then getting rebaptized later. And it was causing a headache for Mormons, and it was causing a headache for federal government. And so, you know, the Mormons challenge this, and it ends up in the Supreme Court, and the government says it's constitutional. This loyalty oath is constitutional. And that really puts a nail in the coffin for John Taylor, and he's forced to contend with this. Not only that, but the Edmunds-Tucker Act is threatening to take away their property and seize their temple. And the Mormons are deeply in debt. They are really, really poor, and having their sacred temples being taken away was too much. And so it's kind of ironic because at the same time, the Republicans are trying to shut this down. Mormons are becoming Republicans themselves. And any Democrats in the area were kind of shut down. It's said that George Buchanan would send prominent Mormon Democrats on missions, so they couldn't build their party up at home. And what they had hoped to happen is to sort of revise the Utah Constitution, tell the government we're not going to practice it anymore in the Constitution, and then we can get statehood and put this all to bed. They convinced John Taylor of this. He says he'll do it. They see it as purely a political move, and this is important because political and spiritual are different for Mormons in this sense. They were always used to telling outsiders one thing and doing something else. And so this is how this was sort of sold to John Taylor. Let's just revise the Constitution, say we're not going to do it anymore, and then we'll still do it, but it'll be a spiritual thing, and it doesn't matter with the hands of the government. And so they try this, but the government doesn't fall for it. The Salt Lake Tribune was known for publishing stories anytime these guys kept breaking the rules like that. And that's why these acts come in, these raids come in. And finally, there's an act that a legislator in Illinois and Idaho passed, the Cullum-Strobel bill. And this bill was going to disenfranchise Mormons everywhere, and basically said, polygamist or not, if you're a Mormon, you don't get US citizenship, you don't get a vote. I mean, imagine telling a whole religious group that they don't have American citizenship just because of what they believe. That's kind of insane to think about in the United States. But that wasn't the worst of it. The bill would codify that Utah was exempt from statehood. And so the church really had to make this choice. And it's a huge time of conflict in the quorum. It's one of the most fascinating times in Mormon history, I think, because the quorum is against themselves. You have apostles who are performing plural marriages, and apostles that are excommunicating people for being in plural marriages, and they're doing it secretly, and they all believe it's never to be taken away. And this leads to another important part, Mormon fundamentalist sort of conspiracy, which is after John Taylor dies, he's replaced by a man named Wilford Woodruff. But the transition of power wasn't very simple, and it took months and months. And the conspiracy is that when Wilford Woodruff was not called to be prophet, he was just acting as a leader in the church, that nothing really counts because it wasn't sanctioned by God. And so one of the things that they do is they put Wilford Woodruff in charge of the Statehood initiative, and he has other prominent Republicans like George Buchanan with him, and they're going to get statehood. And so that's kind of his goal. And they do a few things. They go back and forth, and it's a mess. But basically in 1890, Wilford Woodruff drafts what Mormons would know as the 1890 Manifesto. And it's a manifesto where Mormons say we're no longer going to practice polygamy. It's considered a revelation now, but it's a little bit more complicated for the time period then, because back then Mormons didn't really pay attention to this. They didn't see it as real. There are stories of Mormons laughing it off. A lot of rural Mormons didn't even get the memo till many months later. And even Wilford Woodruff himself couldn't keep to this. Let's see if I have the photo. Yeah, Wilford Woodruff allegedly married Lydia Mountford, a woman who would travel around talking about Israel, and he kind of fell in love with her. And he already had several wives. He went to California and married her on the ocean in 1886, 6 years after he published the manifesto. So Wilford Woodruff isn't even keeping his own rules with the government. But what it did is it allowed for statehood for Utah. The manifesto, even though they weren't keeping it, started to soften the government. The government comes in, they revise the draft of the Utah Constitution where they prohibit polygamy, and slowly things start to happen for the church, where they are given more power. And the 1890 Manifesto did amazing things for the church in that missionary work in the church all of a sudden skyrockets. It starts the modern missionary program, because before that, a lot of people weren't wanting to join this weird polygamy cult. That's how they saw it. But now it's gone. Utah's becoming more open. The governor of Utah is inviting people, outsiders, to come in. And now, instead of your immigrant train might die coming through Utah, now it's come start your businesses. We want more of you. And that was all the public perception. So these are pictures of Utah getting statehood. Finally, in 1886, or 1896, they get statehood, and it was a huge day of celebration. And I think we have in the bottom, let's see, ZCMI in the right corner, they had all this bunting. They did Utah flag with the Salt Lake Temple. They had this neon star on these stores here that they lit up, and they led parades, and militias came and hooted bells and whistles and shot 21 gun salutes, and they were so excited to finally be legitimate. So the polygamy denouncement did a lot for them, but like I said, it's a lot more complicated. So there's this whole period, and you can hear this on the podcast, about post-manifesto. The church sort of falls apart. This is where Mormon fundamentalism really gets going, because 2 apostles stepped down or are booted for still practicing and performing plural marriages all the way up into the 1920s. And so they kind of become the fathers of Mormon fundamentalism, because remember, John Taylor to them said it would never leave the earth. So they really believe that they are keeping the principle alive, and that the LDS church is doing the temporal affairs of the church, if that makes sense. So the LDS church leaves the lights on, they're the lower level of church, they do missionary work, get people in the door, and then their job is to lead people to higher laws that the LDS church no longer practices, like polygamy on earth and law of consecration and things like that. And so all of that happened, statehood happened, and a lot of the development of the West happened because of polygamy. And so that was kind of a really crazy quick overview, but I hope you can understand how important it was and how ingrained it was in the people that started this and got statehood. And even today, I would say the church can't quite get away from polygamy, and Utah can't quite get away with polygamy. Just last year, I helped with a law where we decriminalized it because of all these complicated relationships with polygamy. And so polygamy still exists in Utah, but at least we have a state. And thanks to polygamy, Mormon polygamy, women have the right to vote. And now all women of all colors have the right to vote. So that's kind of the story of statehood in Utah.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Everyone, that was fantastic. That was a lot of history to cram into a short amount of time, so we especially appreciate you for that. Without further ado, let's go with Jenifer Nee's Suffrage. I'll let the actors and the director take the stage.
Suffrage by Jenifer Nee. Ruth, in her early 20s, the fourth of 5 wives. Frances, a generation older than Ruth, the second of 5 wives. Utah, 1887 up until Utah attained statehood in 1895 to 1896. A table, some chairs. Scene 1.
Sister, I simply mean to say,
You mean to say there is something you have left unsaid?
kindness doth not begin with thee.
Says the pugilist.
Charlie Sims is despicable, the way he treats our son.
He is 8 years old, Ruth. They are all despicable when they are 8 years old, even our little James on occasion.
8 is old enough to have the Holy Spirit bestowed upon him. It is old enough to know right from wrong and to be held accountable. And if it is good enough for the Lord, it is good enough for that despicable Charlie Sims and his despicable, irresponsible father.
His father is horrible.
Which is why I bloodied his nose and not that of the demon child. Charlie Sims did not pluck those slurs out of the air he was taught them.
And by the same token, our child learned today that it is acceptable.
What was I to do? What was I to do?
That it is acceptable to answer insults with violence, and from a woman, no less.
He called us godless perverts, Francis, mindless, godless perverts. What was I to do?
Well, I believe it's safe to say that pummeling a grown man on the steps of the church might not have been the most prudent thing.
He waited for us to come out, lying in wait like some kind of... It was a premeditated act of awfulness, and it had to be stopped.
I simply suggest that there might have been another, perhaps less violent way.
Benjamin is gone. Who is left to defend us? Will it be you?
They were but words, sister. Ugly words from an ignorant child.
They put our husband in prison, sister, with words identical.
Which is why we must use softness to turn away wrath. We have a family to think of. You and I, we must stand strong for our children and our sister wives. This is no time for rashness.
Yes, sister.
I am serious.
Of course. Though rashness can be quite gratifying.
Stop it.
Satisfying to unleash the force of 1,000 restrained rebuttals in one taut swing against a man so utterly repellent.
Right this instant.
You will note that Bishop Jameson made no move to intervene until after I exacted justice.
In heaven's name, justice? No one need wonder from whence our daughter inherited her imprudence.
Do not speak to me of her.
We must. She cannot continue to do these things.
Agreed.
Then what do you propose to do?
What have we not tried? What is there left to do?
Exorcism.
Were we so insolent in our youth?
You can better speak to matters of youth. But no, I dare say not. I am just relieved Brother Canfield did not take harsher measures against her. Stealing from a place of business? And this after all that nonsense with whatever that dreadful child's name is. What has become of our children of a sudden?
I do not know.
3 of the 13 have already begun to stray. We must do better.
Where are we lacking? What more can we do?
It might not be a matter of more.
Meaning?
There are times, sister, when what you say to them, the whispered encouragements, when there ought to be discipline.
This is my doing.
No, but any encouragement.
If I have encouraged them, it is only to speak the truth. I did not mean for them to plunge headlong into lunacy.
The distance is short between words and deeds, sister. These are dangerous times. The shadow of the adversary grows, and with it the temptation to follow unclean paths. Any move toward rashness is slippery and treacherous.
I know as much.
Do you?
You doubt?
Do not be angry. It is only that I worry for you. At times you seem quite sad. I do not wish this for you as a sister and a friend, if we are still friends.
Of course. Of course, forgive me. I fear that as much as I want to believe that I am a strong, independent woman, Benjamin's absence has unsteadied me.
It has all of us.
Why is this happening, Francis? Why have they taken him from us? We are not evil. We are not even disruptive. What threat pose we to them in asking simply to be allowed the freedom to follow our God, to love and marry and raise up our family? What threat is it to anyone who or how many a man chooses to marry?
I do not know.
Why will they not leave us alone?
Scene 2. Both enter. Frances busies herself with household stuff.
Absolutely enthralling.
Very interesting indeed.
I have never heard anything like it. Did you not find it stirring?
Well,
Such a powerful argument in defense of womankind.
you did not find her a bit caustic?
She is from New York City. City people are passionate.
I do not question her passion.
Then what?
It is late, and I do not wish to quarrel.
I merely pose a question regarding your opinion of an experience we shared.
About which we were differently moved.
What are your objections?
I have no objections per se.
Then what?
We are different women, Ruth.
Yes, we are. Sometimes I wonder if we two can be called sisters at all.
Sisters, not twins. Would you rather I bind my beliefs to yours, let alone Elizabeth Cady Stanton, whom I do not know, without question or deliberation?
Of course not. But some things are true, sister, and the truth must ring out through the very depths. Miss Stanton's call was like, it was like a revelation, a voice in the wilderness.
Oh, Ruth.
What?
I do not begrudge you your interests. Perhaps I even envy your zeal.
Then please unpinch your face.
We must exercise our gifts. Let us agree to peaceably disagree.
Fine.
Then we are settled.
Settled, if not satisfied.
I am glad. So, who is to help James with his letters?
Oh, no. No. It is not my turn already.
I am afraid it is.
It is May's turn. May should have a turn.
Once again, sister, there is a reason May does not have a turn.
They could learn together, teach one another. Ugh, I will attend to James. Miss Stanton would have much to say about May.
Back again to Miss Stanton.
Oh, Frances.
Miss Stanton seemed to have much to say.
It is fascinating.
About a great many things. What were you two twittering about afterwards? Such excitement on your faces.
You will be pleased to know she firmly disapproves of those who persecute us.
She defends us?
She does. She concedes that the roots of polygamy are in Holy Scripture. And while she believes that all of Christianity and religion in general are delusional and that marriage is a manifestation of patriarchal oppression, it is absolutely unjust for society to use its laws to empower one delusion over another just because they, for whatever reason, feel threatened. And that monogamy actually traces back to pagan Rome.
My goodness.
Indeed.
Pagan Rome.
We are at the head of a rising movement, Francis. There is much to be done.
You might start with laundry. We are all filthy and spotted.
How can you speak of... Sister, why do you not see?
See what?
All that might be attained if only we women would stand and claim what is our right.
What right is that?
To speak and have our voices heard.
We have that already.
Not as equals, not as individuals and citizens.
No?
We are delicate flowers to be shielded from the unsavoriness of lawmaking.
You have witnessed the delicacies of lawmaking. It reeks with a stench.
That may be so,
Good
but
men going this way and that against principle and promise, all to gain favor and power, if only in their own estimation.
which we women will combat.
Huzzah!
Do not make light of this, Francis. Is it not true that while we may own property, pay taxes, and assist in supporting the government, we have no right to say who shall disperse those taxes or how that government shall be conducted? We have no right to say who shall decide on a question of peace or war, which may involve the lives of our sons, brothers, fathers, and husbands. If we have a voice, it is a whisper only. We deserve to be heard. We deserve the vote.
And what are you willing to risk to gain it? Miss Stanton said it herself that the suffrage issue is but part of the Mormon question. Polygamy is intertwined with it. Our lives are intertwined with it, and there are those who would use the vote to attack us.
So we will fight them on both fronts.
But why now? Women had the vote for 17 years before it was taken from us. What did it change? Were we more free then? Did women rise up and claim what you now say we lack? There were no woman lawmakers, no councilmen, no governors, nor were women enslaved or their way of life impinged. We were free then, as we are now, to use the gifts God has given us as helpmeets to our husbands and counselors and teachers to our children.
It is different.
They use the same arguments. They are motivated by the same nefarious designs.
We have gained strength since 1870. We have the National Woman Suffrage Association and the Woman Suffrage Association of Utah. We have Brother Brigham's wife, Apostle Richard's wife, Sarah Kimball. Even the Brethren of the Church supports us. They said as much in the newspaper. George Q. Cannon and Brigham Young. Under the laws of Congress, a woman born in the United States is a citizen just as much as a man. If a woman is entitled to the name and position of a citizen, should she not also be invested with the rights and privileges of a citizen so far as she is capable of properly exercising them? These are God's chosen who have spoken for all to hear. Surely this proves our cause is just. We will use these attacks against us to prove that women are not lambs being blindly led about by our husbands.
Is that how you feel about your marriage?
Of course not.
A relief to hear.
Are you satisfied with yours?
You would ask this?
I wonder whether you have questioned.
You are young.
I am.
If you were not so young, you would know that anyone who has reached my age and years in marriage has asked more questions than you have yet thought of. Do not presume otherwise. What you know of life.
Respectfully, sister, what if it can be better than what we have now? Should we not claim it if we can? It is true that I am subordinate, but might I not still ask? How shall we know whether progress is possible if we do not try? You say women did nothing when they had the vote. I say there are those among us today who were not of age then, and we are determined.
Very well. Would I like the vote restored? Yes. But what I would like even more is for our lives to be ours, for our children to be unburdened from condemnation they are too young to bear. More than casting a ballot, I want to know that the ones I love have enough food and are kept safe from harm and cruelty and taught what they need to know to enter the kingdom of heaven as noble and exalted sons and daughters of God. I want to know that they are happy. This, to me, is more important than any vote, be it by a man or a woman.
I too wish for our children a righteous, honorable life, and that while they are here on earth, they might realize a portion of that by exercising the freedom we will fight to obtain.
And if you lose?
Scene 3. Frances visits Benjamin in jail.
Samuel sends his love. Of course, he would never say as much. He is becoming quite a man. You would be so proud. He has taken to following the sisters and me around, offering to lift every heavy thing. And then when he thinks himself alone, flexes his muscles in all reflective surfaces. This morning, I found our windows stripped of curtains, which I soon found on the backs of our brave son and May, who were engaged in fierce, cloaked battle for your freedom. Proper soldiers always have cloaks and broom-handled bayonets. And May, of course, was with him step for step. It was a sight to see. He tries to be strong. He believes it now his responsibility. Angeline is heavy laden. She does all that she is able, though it grows more and more difficult seemingly by the day. She misses you dearly, as do May and Ruth. And I. Yes, I have spoken with him, malignant man. We have, at least for the moment, reached an agreement in principle. I blame you, you know, that we are beholden to such a ghastly creature for our house and home. We manage. It is not easy. Are you well, my love? Well, they will have a piece of my mind. That is hardly enough to sustain a grown man. I will bring a roast. Rules. I will bring enough for the guards. Perhaps they will share. Are you well treated, Benjamin? Do they see to your needs, aside from the drivel they feed you? You should not be made to suffer at the hands of beasts. No, I will not. Such a man as you should not be treated so. Such a man should not be imprisoned or put on trial. For what? What right have they to pass judgment on you, on us? Were it up to Ruth, we would take up arms against them. You can imagine coming from Ruth. I will reason with her, of course. But to hear them speak, Benjamin, to hear what they would do, they snarl about as if we were worse than the basest. Of course. They are of the children. I do not. We were supposed to have 30 minutes, I was told. And it has certainly not been 30 minutes. I am sorry, but while I may be just a little country woman, I am able to tell the time. Oh, for pity's sake, this is a prison. What life and death obligations must you attend to in the next 15 minutes? Lunch? Sitting? What matters of timely, grave importance would anyone with any sense leave to you? Who is your supervisor? I will have words with him. I am sorry, Benjamin, but this is simply too much. Again and again, we are interrupted, eavesdropped upon. Our visits cut short. I will have my time with my husband. Do you hear me? I will have my time. We will speak about the children more next week, if we are permitted to more than a passing glance and half a syllable. Pray for them, that the Lord will guide them and hold them close. They want for their father. I can stand on my own. Benjamin, husband, pray for us all.
Scene 4. Ruth stands, addresses the audience as if it is suffrage gathering. Frances at the sheriff's office. The action takes place simultaneously.
Thank you. A glass of water would be very nice, yes. Wait, no, I am sorry. No need. I am sorry, Sheriff. I am afraid I am quite upset. Appalled, really. We are all just appalled.
My dear sisters in Zion, and sisters and brethren in the cause of suffrage, it is an honor to stand before you today. I am humbled and not a little afraid, for I am not as so many of the speakers who preceded me or who will follow. I am not educated as they are or sophisticated. I am not an orator or philosopher. The only quality I can claim that is of any merit here today is that I believe. And I pray that my belief in this most important cause may overcome my shortcomings.
I have no idea what has gotten into Julia. To say that we did not raise our daughter to commit these kinds of acts is of no use now, but...
Thank you for this honor. I will serve you and the Women's Suffrage Association with all that I have.
Of course. We will comply with whatever punishment befits this kind of behavior. We will make restitution, and she will restore the property to its original state. It is inexcusable. I simply cannot understand.
Let there be no mistake about what this movement for suffrage really means. This is a call to be and be honored for who we truly are, men and women. None of us wants to turn the world upside down or to convert women into men or supplant the will of God. Rather, we desire women to be free to add the totality of their virtue, to contribute what is uniquely ours, not only to our families, but to our communities, cities, states, and nation.
I do not expect leniency for her. First thievery and now this?
Where much is given, much is expected. Let women have the same opportunities for education, observation, and experience, and see if she is not equally endowed with man and prepared to bear her part on all general questions, socially, spiritually, and politically.
She is sullen of late and angry. She questions everything and will not hear answers. The only time she seems at all herself is when she is permitted to visit with her father, though those occasions are rare and brief and terrifying in their own way. Children should not see their parents imprisoned. It has been hard for her, for all of us, but she seems especially shaken.
Let it be known that we do not wish to take the place of men. Enfranchisement will not allow women to become any but who and what they are.
She does not understand. I do not understand, Brother Canfield, Sheriff. I do not understand why we are pursued and punished.
There are those who bind our call for women's suffrage with that of polygamy. They believe, and they have said as much, that they will use this issue to criminalize the way of life for many families in this community, including mine. My own husband is in prison. I know not what risks I take by speaking publicly. We shall see.
This is not directly your concern, I know, but why are so many people, some who are thousands of miles away, so concerned with how we create our family? You know us, Sheriff. You know my husband. He has done nothing to injure them, nor would he ever wish to.
Others proclaim restoring the vote to women will increase the power of the church, for surely we submit to our husbands in all things.
If our lives are a sin, let them condemn us where they worship.
But I know of no more independent woman than one who lives the law of polygamy, for she must hold herself up among many and care for the needs of more. That said, if you doubt us, let us prove it. Given the vote, we will study, we will learn, and we will act for ourselves and for our families.
Let them bring us before their God, and let him pass judgment.
To our sisters who believe in their heart, who fear in their heart that suffrage is an affront to the will of the Almighty, I say only that the sole goal of our movement is equality under the law, true partnership with men in shaping the rules that govern us and to ensure that they are fair.
We are good people. We live and work and love like any other. Our hearts are the same and our desires for ourselves, our children, and our fellow man. We are people of faith, which faith distinguishes us from others. But are we so alien as to warrant this?
We offer up to God what is his, acknowledging his supremacy in all things. And it is for this reason, because God himself has created us as partners to our husbands and stewards of the earth, that we engage in this work.
Having said that, I will ensure that my daughter pays her penance.
So I am honored that you have such faith in me, and I dedicate myself to this great cause and to you. We cannot fail.
Ruth and Frances come together, having left their respective appointments.
Well, what did he say? Frances, I have said that I am sorry. I have said it again and again.
Yes, you have.
Will you not forgive me?
I am sure I will. You were not there. You left me there to grovel on behalf of our child and then escort her home from the office of the sheriff, alone.
I know, and I am sorry.
She is not of your blood, it is true, but we have taken a vow before God to serve as stewards and protectors of our children, and they are all our children, Ruth, blood or not.
I know.
And where were you?
I have been given a tremendous responsibility. I could not be present to accept it.
Apparently not.
What did Sheriff Wilson say?
There will be no formal punishment provided she repairs and repaints the damaged fence, which she will do straight away without help. If she can pull it down, she can put it up.
Agreed.
We should meet to decide the rest of her repentance.
She will offer a personal apology at minimum.
Oh, there will be more. There is much more in store for that young lady, rest assured. Much, 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 much more.
I see that.
will you see that she follows through with the repairs?
Of course. Sorry, when?
Oh, Ruth,
It's only that I am to preside at
just go.
Go where?
Anywhere, accept an award, change the world, but right this instant, I cannot look at you.
I am sorry. Francis!
There are priorities in life, Ruth.
I know.
Then please do not make me ask which are yours.
Now, just a minute.
If you had seen the look in her eyes when I went to collect her, I have never seen such emptiness in one so young. The way she sat, the heaviness of her shoulders. She is too young to feel such pain, Ruth, and she is far too young to believe she must face it alone.
She is not alone.
Clearly, she believes she is.
I will speak with her.
She listens to you, looks to you as a guide and an example.
I know. I will see that she mends the fence.
Thank you.
Scene 5. Ruth rushes in. Francis is at a table bent over a ledger.
We are under siege.
Siege?
Yes.
Sister,
Have we not endured enough? The harassment, the assassinations, but then the Cullum Act, the Edmunds Act, and now, do you know what they mean to do now?
clearly not.
It was not enough for Edmunds to target polygamists. No. The distinguished senator of Vermont and congressman of Virginia proposed to disenfranchise all Utah women, deprive all of any right to vote.
What?
Yes, and that is not all. Would you like to know what else our Congress is considering for us? Our Congress now proposes, I have it here. I would not have believed it myself, but I have it here, the vile, putrid,
Ruth.
the Edmunds-Tucker Act. Introduced to wide acclaim, this bill seeks to disincorporate the church, require an anti-polygamy oath for all prospective voters, jurors, and public officials, prohibit the practice of polygamy and punish it with a fine and imprisonment of up to 5 years, abolish the common law spousal privilege for polygamists, requiring wives to testify against their husbands. This is only part of what they would do to us. Sister, it goes on.
This is not right.
It is not.
I did not believe they would go so far.
They will go so far as we let them, Francis.
They would eradicate our religion entirely by law?
They would purge us as a scourge.
They, whose own ancestors fled,
Yes,
crossed land and sea to escape the very same.
the very same.
But what of the Constitution?
Irrelevant.
Our founding principles?
Trivial compared to the threat we pose to the soul of humankind. And because we do not have the vote, we are powerless to stop them. Do you believe me now?
Will it succeed?
It might. The movement has support from powerful people who wield their power like a scythe.
God will not allow it. No. God will not allow it. He will not allow the kingdom on earth to fall at the hands of Congress.
It seems to me he has allowed a great many things.
Do not say that. Do not say that. How is he to bless us if we do not have faith?
Suffrage is a right that should be claimed by every citizen of this country. In this, we should not have to rely on a blessing from God or anyone else.
You walk dangerously, Ruth.
We are in danger.
My concern is for you.
This is about me and you. I will gather the women. I can stop this.
You.
Yes, we must come together now. There is no more time.
You.
Yes.
You can stop this.
Yes.
That evil is before us. I cannot deny. I do not doubt your report. But I believe that the Lord will provide passage to safety, as he did Moses and the Israelites. Whether that is through suffrage or some other way, I do not know. But our God is the King, is the God of heaven and earth. And for the faithful and humble, he parted the sea, sent manna from heaven, and restored his church in these latter days. Faith is not faith if every step is made clear and smooth.
Faith without works is dead,
True. And perhaps there is more that I must do to manifest his will. If this is the case, then I am willing. But sister, I look at you and I fear. No, please, let me speak. Like the army of Helaman.
All men.
We are called to fight the adversary. I am ever your sister in this, but it would do well to remember the stripling warriors attributed their victories to their mothers. But you, that people look at you and listen to you and come to stand behind you ready to follow. The speeches are rousing and you have become quite a skilled performer. But I fear you have lost your way, sister. You envision yourself a warrior and forget the source of their strength.
Without warriors like me, sister, you are banished.
Scene 6. Ruth and Frances are seated.
Bishop Jameson will speak to the brethren to see what aid is available. Sister Richards also from the Relief Society.
Yes, very kind.
Lucy will collect the younger children. Perhaps Angeline can see to the others if she is well enough. Family meeting following evening meal.
A few months awaiting trial is injustice enough, but 2 years he is to be imprisoned? Longer for polygamy than for robbery.
Yes.
How will we live so long without him?
We will do what we must.
How?
We will find work, those of us who can. The rest will shoulder the other duties. We will discuss specifics tonight.
What are you?
And while the brethren may offer some assistance, we cannot place too great a burden on them. Since the passage of Edmunds Tucker, federal marshals have taken away even more of our men, and there is no end in sight. We are not the only family affected, and there will be great need. To be safe, we must rely only on ourselves. Angeline is first among us, and of course will speak first, but
Frances.
We must all come to an agreement.
Frances, look at me.
We cannot rely on her health.
Please look at me.
You must help me. We must stand together. You must help me.
Frances!
What?
What will we do?
We will go on. We have no choice.
Angeline.
Yes.
In her state, she cannot lead. Were it solely a matter of age, that would be enough. She cannot withstand.
Would that the trail had been kind to her. I was a child cared for and coddled as much as was possible, and yet it was almost too much. Angeline suffered so. I truly thought she would not survive winter quarters. And then Wyoming.
She has endured much.
Which is foremost the reason I cannot be seen to be fomenting mutiny against her.
I shall help in any way that I can, but I am fourth. To speak out of turn, it would be...
Nay, and even Lucy are loving mothers and wives, but they are not so strong as you. They will need us both to carry on.
We will care for them.
We, both of us, must find work. The mortgage holders have been forgiving so far of our obligation. They believed as we did that the trial would end in our favor, but now we must pay.
I can take in mending, pressing, other needlework. Sadly, these are my only skills.
I will see about bookkeeping. Mr. Samuelson has retained Benjamin's position only while we... I will see about bookkeeping. With so many men imprisoned, there may be opportunities.
What of the smithy? Mr. Samuelson has retained Benjamin's position only while we await a trial.
I will speak with him.
Good. He does not like me.
He fears you, as is wise.
He fears all members of the church and all women. It is not only me.
You are the only one who has accosted him in the public square. He reserves a special terror for you.
Then you will speak with him. What will you say?
I do not know. What can one say in such a circumstance?
We are alone.
Would that we were, sister. Were it we two alone, I would have confidence in our fate. But there are 16 who depend upon us, and we with limited means to care for them.
I will do my part.
You are needed. Here.
I understand. I do.
Scene 7. Ruth is seated mending a man's sock. Scattered newspapers tempt her from her table. Frances opposite at what she hopes will be her new job.
Ugh, Brother Anderson, what grotesque toes you have, devouring your stockings like 10 tiny horned demons. You do not know the horrors we endure, good Sister Ruth, pierced by dagger-sharp toenails, tearing, smelly ooze seeping into our skin, choking every last thread. Have mercy on us, sister. Let us die here while we are clean and the air is thick with the scent of burning in the oven. Perhaps the brethren can use it in the construction of the new meeting house. It is said they want for bricks. I was not meant to mend. Stockings, trousers, blouses, gloves, this is not... And yet here I am, and there they are. Piles and piles of them, and for whom, I ask you? The very same people who secretly and not secretly would have us rounded up, tarred and feathered like the prophet Joseph. Perhaps I should conscript myself into slavery. I have. That is what I have done. Would I do so if I were a man? No, I would not have to if I were a man. I would have rights. The world would be open to me to create and live according to the laws of God and the will of my fellow men who would listen to me, because I too was a man and therefore worthy of respect and a fair hearing. But because I am a wife and a mother and a woman, I am, what? Property. Mindless, fragile property, not fit for anything but prayer and procreation and child rearing. This cannot be right. This cannot be righteous.
Frances with ledger to Brother Fisk, her potential employer.
I do have a few questions. In looking at the ledger, there are a few items that, well, here, for example, the amount owed does not match that of the same item on this line ordered for a different customer. In this case, they purchased the same quantity from the same manufacturer during the same harvest. There are a number of similar inconsistencies, as well as many simple mathematical errors. I have prepared a revised account for the past 6 months reflecting the savings that could have been achieved and the difference in revenue. You will see that they are significant. Interest and education, Brother Fisk. I was never one for dolls. Benjamin was very patient, while Angeline taught me how not to scorch everything. As it happens, though, mathematics is helpful in many settings. Even cooking is, at least in part, a matter of numbers, though admittedly not as invigorating to me as a column in a ledger like this, a series in search of a solution. There's something elegant here, none of the willy-nilly nature of muffins or casserole. I am told cooking is something of an art, but I think it closer to a culinary conspiracy. You'll see the differences circled here in red. I am pleased that you have found my work satisfactory. If we might turn to the matter of wages, assuming you wish me to continue. Forgive me, but I do not understand. Of course, this was a trial period, and you are free to decide however you choose. This was our agreement. However, I believe I have demonstrated my abilities and the potential benefit to your establishment of bringing me on. Is there something more I might have? Of course. Please do not. I can see myself out. I will gather my things and be gone within the hour.
Ruth stands, now at a gathering of suffrage supporters.
They mean to push us. We will push back. They call our lives, those of us who have chosen lives under the covenant of plural marriage, one of the twin relics of barbarism, the other being slavery. And they use this argument to deprive women of the recognition we deserve and on a daily basis earn. They use it to threaten our admission as a state. They use it to issue orders of extermination, for there are those who would rather kill us than allow us to live and worship as our conscience and our God dictate. These are horrors snaking up from the very depths of evil, and we will meet them with all the courage that defines us. We demand change, and as citizens, we will not run ashamed into the darkness of bigotry and malice. I have here a petition, drafted and signed by the foremost Mormon women of the suffrage movement. Here we dare call these machinations what they are: inexcusable, high-handed oppression, not only of polygamous women, but all Utah women. Well, we demand better. We demand justice and fairness in and under the law. Here is my signature. Will you add yours?
Perhaps an hour later, Frances enters to find a meeting in progress of anti-suffragists.
Hello? Brother Fisk, it is Frances. I know it is past closing, but the door was open and I was nearly halfway home when I realized I'd left my bonnet. It is 3/4 of an hour back again, so I thought it worth chancing that you were still here. Please forgive the intrusion. I was not aware you were holding a meeting. I will just... Good evening, Brother Butler. Brother Jensen. Forgive the intrusion. No, I am sorry, but I believe as I entered that I heard my sister Ruth's name mentioned with a tone of some hostility. True or no, it is clear she was the subject of this little gathering. And while I was not invited to join you, and so may be imposing a bit on what you hope to discuss, neither was she. And it seems, if you will forgive my candor, it seems at the very least in poor taste to speak about a person if you are unwilling first to speak to them. I do see more clearly now why you believe me unfit for your employ, brother. However, given your concern for my sister's psychological well-being and moral character, I wish you had not wasted my time in what you must have known was a futile exercise. I have a family to care for, a family that includes Ruth. If I had known your objections to her involvement in the suffrage movement, I would have sought work elsewhere. I am not naive. I know there are those who do not believe that women should have the vote now or perhaps ever. And perhaps Ruth is a bit overzealous in her approach, but I can say this about her. What she does honestly. And what she believes, she is not afraid to proclaim publicly. She is courageous and forthright in her convictions, enough to present them for open debate. And while I may have questions and even concerns about whether the course she advocates is prudent, I will stand with her against all who collude in secret or wish her ill simply because she dares to speak. I need work. My children must eat, but I will not feed them using money earned from cowards. This has been a most enlightening evening. It behooves me to know your names and faces. I will give Ruth, Benjamin, my sisters, and our children your regards.
Scene 8, night, early morning. Ruth enters. Frances is at a table.
It is early, sister, even for you.
Yes.
Are you unwell?
I'm fine. Simple fatigue.
You work too hard. Shall I make you some?
There's nothing.
Do not be ridiculous. It was my week to go to the market.
Please sit down.
I will go at first light. Let me...
Sit, sister. We have much to discuss before the others wake.
You are unwell, then?
We must decide what to do.
About?
It is again left to you and me to find the way forward.
I do not... Sister, please.
We are at risk of foreclosure.
What?
It is not a surety, but
What do you mean foreclosure?
You know the term.
Of course I know the term.
Then you know the meaning.
How did this happen?
How? We have no money. We have no husband. And we were not rich even when we did. But now the debts he left us have doubled and our expenses are growing because we have boys who eat like mules and girls who grow 3 inches in a month and nobody but me bringing in anything resembling a wage, and even that because of you. It cannot continue. Say something.
Because of me, what?
I cannot continue like this.
I have worked. What of the money I have given?
$1 here, $5 there. This is not money. You have not given.
That is not. Because of me, what?
You spend day and night with your band of radicals campaigning for women's suffrage, talking about granting women their rights, and all the while your children, in blood and under God, go hungry and endure the grossest indignities.
That is not true.
How would you know?
Because I fight for them.
You have left them to fight for themselves, to defend themselves against enemies on both sides. Those who would make our lives a crime, and now those who see their mother as a militant, determined to upset everything we have worked to build. These many weeks and months, have you looked at your children? You preach suffrage? They suffer, Ruth. Your own children suffer. We suffer.
All right. Perhaps for the moment, I am neglectful. For the moment, I am delinquent, but everything I do is to build for those children a future that is theirs. I am not content to stay silent. I will not bury my head in housework.
No, you are a warrior. Let women speak, you say. Let them act according to their conscience. Let them live, finally, honoring the dictates of their own minds. And in this, let them fulfill the true measure of their creation. All women, except women like me.
All my life I have followed. I have obeyed. I have done everything that has been asked of me without question or protest, and I have done well and honorably by Benjamin, the children, and you. I am a good wife. I am a good mother. But now, finally, I can be more.
Oh, yes. Now you have your great cause, which you say is not just for women, but all of humankind. And those of us who do not share your passion and outrage care nothing for posterity and what will become of us, but every day, I do what must be done to ensure this future about which you speak so long and eloquently. I am out there fighting for our livelihood, fighting because no one will hire someone, never mind a woman, associated with such a threat and a menace.
Ugh.
That is what you are called. Did you know that?
I could care less what those people.
No, you do not. But while you are out there caring less about those people, while you are out meeting and speaking and petitioning on behalf of women, I am here, trying with all my might to fulfill what my faith tells me is a woman's most sacred calling, teaching and strengthening those souls who will fail and founder without mothers like me. And this work, which you have come to dismiss as subservient, is not only for today or tomorrow or even 100 years from now, it is for eternity. And you would have me shrink before you? Katie Stanton, your beloved Susan Anthony, you would have me apologize and abandon my work for yours? No. I have a home to save and children who are on the precipice and leaning out into nothingness. And so I might add, do you?
What do you want me to say?
Nothing. I want you to do before it is too late. They ask for you, each in their own way. James, I heard, trying to read alone the stories you read to him at bedtime through tears because he cannot do it as well as you. Samuel and Martha reenact suffragette protests, though neither has an idea what suffrage is. Inevitably, there are knights on horseback.
Stop.
Even Julia, angry as she is at all of us, I found trying on your dresses and shoes, looking into the mirror for the smallest glimpse of you.
Stop it, Francis.
The twins are too young for any of that, but even they fuss more and ask to be held, but none of us can comfort them because it is not us they want. David is—
All right. Enough.
Come back to us, Ruth. Please, before it is too late.
Scene 9. Ruth addresses a gathering of women, a public town hall style meeting in which they are both pro and anti-suffragists.
We have been called slaves, mindless followers, dupes of the priesthood. We have been caricatured, mocked, patted on the head, and told that we cannot help but to submit to man's every whim, spiritual, physical, and political. God forbid that we should think for ourselves, speak for ourselves, act for ourselves. But he does not forbid. In the church, we are called brother and sister, not master and servant. In all matters pertaining to the church, we women cast our votes equally. We raise our hands and sustain, or we raise them to object. In each we are counted. We should not expect less elsewhere, or indeed accept less. Capitulation leads to capitulation, and we must not capitulate lest we be driven from place to place again and forever. We demand only what we deserve. That is all.
Scene 10. Ruth enters, sits heavily. Francis enters after a beat.
Go upstairs. Change out of your good clothes. Hang them up and put them in the closet. Good stockings put away. I do not want to see anything on the floor when I come up there. Are you listening? No, they are not. Wash your face and hands. I want you clean when the sisters arrive with dinner. What are the chances they will do any of those things?
Slim.
Very.
They do not know what to do, so they will do all except what we ask.
We shall see them in patched school trousers and Sunday shirts. One shoe, not their own.
The sisters will understand. I think Angeline would have liked the service.
Keep it short. No sentimental jibber jabber. Sing a song, eat a ham, and get back to work. I will miss that grumpy growl.
As will I. She was a sister and a mother to me.
To us all. Come, let us prepare for the guests before May and Lucy get home. We cannot have them sobbing over uncooked sweetbread.
It was good that Benjamin was allowed to attend.
In shackles. What did they think he was going to do? Launch an escape at his wife's funeral?
His suit was too loose. He is thinner even than last week.
He is not fed. The guards, you'll notice, get fatter and fatter. May they soon explode.
I cannot bear seeing him so sad. Such a man should not have to endure so much suffering alone.
He loved her dearly. She was his first love, and there is no love like the first for men like Benjamin. He proposed to her when he was 10 years old. Did you know that? Still a boy, drowning in his father's mended trousers. Of course, she said no. I believe she even kicked his shins.
Good for her.
But he waited. And from his telling, he grew on her like a fungus in springtime. They were married as soon as they came of age. Praise God, he is a patient man. He was right to choose her. She was among the elect. Truly, she has earned her salvation and her place at the right hand of God.
Does he love us so much, Francis?
I believe he loves us differently. But we cannot compare. To ask such things can only lead to grief and doubt.
Of course. We will comfort him as best we can. He needs us more than ever.
I do not know how or what good we can do for him from here.
You are first among us now. We will follow your lead.
Then we are doomed.
Scene 11, Francis, alone in silhouette.
Inasmuch as laws have been enacted by Congress forbidding plural marriages, which laws have been pronounced constitutional by the court of last resort, I hereby declare my intention to submit to those laws, to use my influence with the members of the church over which I preside, to have them do likewise. There is nothing in my teachings to the church or in those of my associates during the time specified, which can be reasonably construed to inculcate or encourage polygamy. And when any elder of the church has used language which appeared to convey such teaching, he has been promptly reproved. And I now publicly declare that my advice to the Latter-day Saints is to refrain from contracting any marriage forbidden by the law of the land. Wilfred Woodruff, President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, 1890.
Frances crosses, begins to pack her things. Ruth enters, watches.
What will you do?
Benjamin has made his choice, and he has chosen May.
For reasons passing understanding.
Come now.
Yes, she is beautiful. She is kind, obedient, faithful, long-suffering, happy.
Virtues, all.
Dumb as a houseplant.
Stop it.
It's true.
Not a houseplant.
She is not you.
Or you. Or Lucy. Benjamin was within his rights to choose, and he chose her. May is his lawful wife now, so I cannot stay. The manifesto has forbidden me and called my children bastards.
This is an abomination.
It is the proclamation of God's prophet and a decision by our husband.
It recognizes current families as they are.
As mistakes, to be glossed over. I do not wish to be viewed as anyone's well-intentioned error.
You are not.
Then what am I? What are we, if not persons whose situation and standing the Lord has disavowed? What is our marriage, except something the brethren deny ever teaching?
I don't... Please, stay.
And do what?
We will find a way. You are as much family as I or May.
I was.
Are. Your children are my children, and Angeline's, and Lucy's, and May's.
What will you do?
Stay? Fight? What else can I do?
And Benjamin?
Benjamin.
He cannot acknowledge you.
Whether he will or will not is up to him, but he can, and will if he is half the man I believed when we married.
Ruth.
What? You defend him?
I believe in his...
Oh, Francis.
To be in his position...
Is to face difficult choices, which a man does.
I believe he has.
Then we believe differently.
What would you have us do? What is the right answer according to you?
Stand! Stand for something, anything at this point, but stand up!
I warned you there were dangers, consequences that would affect us all, and so there are.
We can change it! Francis, this is surrender. President Woodruff has bowed to political pressures only. God will right it.
That may be so. But for now, we are banished, as you said.
Wait, a year, maybe 2. Thousands have been affected by this. We will band together and overturn it.
It is not for you to overturn the will of the Lord. We have rendered unto Caesar what is his.
This cannot be what God wants. He is not fickle. As you said, he does not bow to the will of men. I need you.
You need faith.
In what? Wilfred Woodruff is no prophet. He cannot speak for God.
Do not, Ruth. Do not disparage the mouthpiece of the Lord. This is blasphemous. It is sin.
Then I am a sinner.
Your anti-suffragist foes were transparent in their wishes. For years, they have shouted their views from the pulpit and podium and the halls of Congress. They have accused and disparaged and threatened the church, and yet you are surprised. What was President Woodruff to do? Allow senators and representatives to wipe the church from the earth?
The prophets of old have stood firm against stronger foes. President Woodruff is weak, and the Lord will censure him in time.
It is not for you to question or judge. Perhaps we cannot risk 40 years in the wilderness. Perhaps there is no more manna. Do not risk your salvation. We must have faith.
You ask me to believe the unbelievable, to hope that a wrong may in fact be right somehow?
I do not ask it. The Lord does.
I do not. Please, sister.
Perhaps I will return to Illinois. I have not seen my sister in years. They will help, though what is to be done with someone in my state, I do not know. I will find work.
Work? Francis, your life is here.
It was here.
Is.
You would have me stay to watch all that I have left. Was it worth it, Ruth? These changes you worked so hard to attain?
This is not that change.
It is the path to statehood with suffrage in tow. You will have your vote.
This is not that change.
Yes, it is. Do you not see? Will you not finally see? This is what happened. And now I can face only what is before me with as much dignity as I am able.
Francis.
I have lost my heart, Ruth. Do you understand? He held my heart. I gave it to him freely and completely, and he filled the whole horizon. Everything I saw of life and love and hope I saw in his face. I saw eternity there. And he's gone. I want to believe his intentions are pure, that there is righteousness in them. I want to believe that choosing May was a decision inspired by God, and that there is a reason that of the four of us, it is she who will blossom into the best eternal companion for him. For he is Benjamin. So, there is no longer room in my life for causes or dreams beyond what the Lord himself reveals.
Oh, the Lord, the Lord! Will you never, can you not believe in me, in us? Stay, let the Lord work within us and make his will known that way. Surely he would have us use our agency for the common good in all things, spiritual and temporal. Do you not think it so, Francis? Can it not be so? Will you not try? Please, sister.
Oh, how I love you, Ruth.
Do not leave me here alone.
You are not alone, nor shall you ever be. There are many who will cleave unto you and look to you for guidance. If you believe in your heart that you walk in truth, then do so with courage. But I must go and do likewise. I must provide for my children, and I cannot do that here. Please try to understand and wish me well as I do you.
I will try.
What of you? Will you marry again?
What decent man would have me?
This is true. You are a troublemaker.
A rebel.
A malcontent. But as lovely as you are disruptive.
When will you go?
As soon as I am able to secure passage. Until then, I have taken rooms at the boarding house in town. They are small but clean, and the proprietors have agreed to take me on in the kitchen.
Benjamin will not approve.
Benjamin is made aware. That is enough.
You're ready then, and I the last to know.
The last, the hardest to tell.
I will visit you every day while you are there. You will not be rid of me yet.
Please do not. I feel that a clean break would be best for me and the children. That is why I have chosen to go into town. Fewer familiar faces and pitying looks.
You ask too much.
It is what we need. Please grant us that. It will be hard enough as it is. Julia and David are furious.
They are our family too.
That has changed. You must account for this. Will you allow Benjamin and May to adopt the twins?
Yes. They deserve a home. But these abominable laws will not keep me from fulfilling my role as a sister mother of sorts. I will find a place nearby and haunt them like a ghost. May is May, but she is a good mother. Better than me, I think.
Not so.
But perhaps I may also study, learn a skill like you. I must be self-sufficient now. I will earn my way forward, practice what I preach.
You are a peculiar woman, dear one. You have my heart. Always. Be well.
Scene 12, 1896. Utah has been admitted to the Union, and with it, women have gained their enfranchisement. Ruth on one side of the stage, Frances on the other. They see each other come together, take hands, or embrace.
You are beautiful still.
You do not lie well.
I do not lie.
You are well?
Well enough. Not so beautiful.
You lie.
So, tell me, what news? Are you well?
Well enough, I suppose.
Still fighting the good fight?
Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more.
Well played, Shakespeare. What of Benjamin?
He is ever Benjamin, strong and steady. May has learned to cook.
No.
She brought a roast the other day, and it was delicious. Tender with potatoes and carrots and onions, followed by pie.
The universe tilts.
I do not know if this is progress or the apocalypse.
The children are well?
You would not recognize the twins.
I am sure I would.
I am sorry.
'Tis fine, sister.
You are missed.
As are you.
Lucy sends her love. I see her often. She has taken another husband, a widower, nearly 10 years her senior. He snorts.
Oh,
Yes, but he seems a good man, constant and kind.
good.
It is not the same.
No.
Benjamin sends fond greetings.
I am glad he is well.
I often think of punching him in the face.
Grudges are not beautiful, sister.
I could not care less about me, but I wound those who betray my Francis, at least in my mind.
I have missed you.
Come home.
I am home.
Your house is there, not your home.
You would have no time for me. A star ascendant in the movement, I hear, a force to be reckoned with.
And so I am reckoned with, relentlessly, it seems.
Are you well, sister? Are you happy?
I am busy. There is much to be done still.
Always. I would rather you were happy.
Because you love me.
Lord help me, I do.
Thank you, Francis.
You are my sister.
They separate, not wanting to let go, to opposite sides of the stage, addressing the audience.
We have won. Statehood and suffrage.
I am very proud. I know, pride. But I shan't deny what is true, and I am, in fact, ridiculously proud.
With it, we have cast votes in impressive numbers, sought election, and even won in some cases.
My dear Julia has emerged from her rebellion, attained an education, and is at this very moment serving an apprenticeship with the most prestigious firm in town. She is very smart.
We have done what others said we could not, ought not, must not do, and they will not take it from us again. We women have proven ourselves strong in the hottest fire and firm amid the fiercest storm. We will not stand down.
My son David grows taller and taller each day bringing him nearer and closer in resemblance to his father. I show him the etchings, so he believes.
I have come to see my sister suffragettes as family. They cannot take the place of those who we have lost along the way, of course. No. But we are bound together, and there is safety and solace in that.
Mind you, I would love my children regardless. I do love them regardless. They are my life, the reason I wake, work, and hope. There's nothing else. And so, pride. Yes, I am proud, regardless of the fact that they are bright, creative, handsome individuals. I am proud because they are good and know that they are loved and that there is a plan for them to achieve true happiness through the eternities.
Soon, a woman will be governor. President, I know it. Because we will not stop at ballot casting. We will get beyond legislating the heights of hats in theaters. One must start somewhere, I tell myself again and again in my regulated hat. A woman will lead, and the country will be better for it.
I do get lonely sometimes when I stop long enough to think about it. So I do not stop. It has not been easy.
I myself have not sought office. After all, I am tired. It has not been easy. It is never easy.
It is never easy. But I believe.
I still believe.
It will all be worth it in the end.
It will it not?
Be worth it?
In the end?
End of play.
Wow. I knew what was gonna happen, and I'm still like blown away and shook and shocked. So thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, April, for those incredible, incredible performances. Jenifer, for your brilliant writing. Cheryl, for your wonderful directing. That was absolutely incredible. We're entering the Q&A portion of the evening, so you can, if you look at the bottom of the screen, type in your questions, and then I'll make sure to get to them. But I obsessed over this play after I read it, and I have plenty of questions, so I'll get the conversation going, and then please put your questions in the Q&A in the chat, and then also remember that there's closed captioning if you need it. We're trying to make sure everybody can participate. But I'm gonna start off with a question for everyone. What's your personal relationship to polygamy, the church, this history? What drew you to it? What biases do you feel like you entered this work with? And how were your beliefs and knowledge challenged in writing this, directing this, and acting it? This is a really like fraught history that y'all have just brought to life. So I'm curious what growth it caused within each of you as you approached it.
Who do you want to start?
You just put the camera on yourself, so it's on you, Jen.
Well, I guess I can only speak for myself. The project was brought to me by Jerry at Plan B Theater Company, and it was something that I am embarrassed and ashamed to say that I didn't know anything about. I have grown up in the region my entire life and had no understanding whatsoever, either of really the intricacies of the women's suffrage movement or of the living of the life of polygamy. And I to this day can't speak to that really, except for what I was able to conjure up in my own little imagination. But it was certainly something that I had to do a lot of studying about. As Lindsay so brilliantly encapsulated for us, it's such a fraught and complicated, and there are so many there are so many threads in this tapestry that in the writing of it, there were a lot of questions about how I would structure the play, whether I would bring in historical characters, whether I would make it how much of our history could I include within the space of a 75-minute play, with two brilliant actors, but two, what could I do with that format and this subject? So I really just tried to make it as much about people and what I imagine their experience might have been, and then weave as much of the history as I could. Clearly did not do the history justice, but I tried to do what I could to provide what I felt when I was researching the topic, which was people and places and a country, straining against each other, but trying to come together in weird and often conflicting ways. And I was just really, really, really blessed to have the team that you just saw come together. I can't say enough about how blessed I am as a writer, and how they lift the words off the page and make it, and they brought something to life that I can only put on paper. So thank you, ladies, all of you.
I'll go next. I grew up in Utah and grew up in the LDS church. I've been out for the last 30 years, but I very much connected with knowing what is expected of women in the church and what I wanted, and the struggle between those two things. I very much related to Ruth during the time, the character of Ruth, the younger wife, during the time that I was directing it, and her struggle with wanting to go out and do these things, and then having these children at home that she knew she had a responsibility for. And so I very much related to that. I also find this play very interesting. I don't think a lot of people think about what happened to these women after polygamy ended, and the ones whose husbands really truly did end their polygamous marriages. Where'd they go? What did they do? So that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
I was raised LDS. We don't, as a family, have a long history with the church. My parents converted after 4 children right before I was born, and then they had another 4. And so we don't have any history with polygamy or anything like that. I'm no longer LDS. I've been out for decades as well, but I very much have always kind of wished that I had a sister wife, because raising children, even 2 of them, is incredibly difficult, whether you're working outside the home or only in the home. And the truth is, Sarah was a nanny for my kids for a summer before we did this play originally. And so she kind of was my sister wife for a minute, and that was wonderful. But there's a lot about these women that I relate to. I don't think that their troubles and their concerns are limited to the time period in which they lived, or the place, or the constraints of their religion. I think they're similar to struggles that we all have still.
Yes, I was April's sister wife briefly for 3 summers. I also grew up in Utah and was not raised in the faith. My grandfather is from here and met my grandma when he was on leave in New York City and brought her back because she thought this was the Wild West. And so I was raised Catholic. But my grandpa, all his side of the family was Mormon, and actually my mom has been doing some genealogy, and I do have a polygamist great-great-great-grandfather, Hiram Boynton, who had 4 wives. So we just found that out last week, actually. So yeah, so it brings it home. I auditioned for this show at the ripe old age of 22, and that was a million years ago, and have had so many different thoughts about, I mean, we read this play last year around the same time, and I felt so differently then than I did back in 2013. And then I feel differently reading it today than I did yesterday after everything that's happened in the world. And it's just so, it's so deeply, it's like, I mean, it's such a specific story, but it encompasses so much about the human experience and family and politics in any decade, any century. It's just so, there's stuff that I'm still finding after we've read it a billion times. It's just wonderful. So Jen's laughing that we've read it a billion times, but we have, and I would read it a billion more, so.
Thank you all so much. I'm gonna incorporate some questions from the audience now. Jeff Sweat wants to know, Jenifer, how closely did you match to real life experiences of Mormon women? Was there any particular person that it was loosely based on or based on?
Not enough that I would name names. I read some family histories, and I read what I could over about I would say a 6-month period. I did a lot of reading, and from that I looked more to imagine as best I could. I don't have children. I have a herd of unruly dogs, and so I was just trying to imagine as best I could what it might be like for women in that period, what lives they might have led, and then weave that into the time period and into the struggle that was happening around these women that they sort of cobbled together from all of the stories that I'd read, but no one in particular, but a lot of little bits of different people.
Thank you so much, Jenifer. This question's for everyone. And polygamy is often like a hush-hush topic in Utah. Like sometimes it's very much avoided. It's a difficult history with a complicated and marginalized contemporary incarnation of it. And it's understandable that some are afraid that its history would be used crudely to discredit and shame LDS church members. And how do you suggest we approach this history today in our public schools, in our wards, in our families, given the political and educational challenges surrounding teaching this history?
I have thoughts on that. So I grew up in the LDS church, not knowing any of this history, and it was kind of a shock to my system, which is why I started a podcast on polygamy. So I'm not a polygamist, never been a polygamist, hated polygamy. And I have found that just like hitting it head on is like the best way to do it. Don't tiptoe around the stuff, because then everyone feels like it's something we have to tiptoe around. The fact is, we have so much documentation on this history that we can't really deny that it happened. Not only did it happen, but it shaped everything. And so to understand it means to understand ourselves. And that scares people, and because they're worried they're going to find something unseemly. Well, guess what? You're going to find something unseemly, like you will in every part of history, in every human experience, in my history, in your history. And in doing so is a courageous act showing that we're accepting ourselves by accepting this history. And, you know, I'm noticing in our comments that we have some former polygamists that are watching. And Shirley Draper, she helps an organization called Cherish Families. So I'm going to make a plug for them. She left the religion as a plural wife, left polygamy, and now she helps people with resources. And that's another way to get involved, is interact with people on the ground doing work with these communities, because it's still very present and it still affects our lives. And you'll realize that they're just people, just like you.
I don't know how anyone can top that answer, Lindsay. Good job. That's all.
Does anybody else want to take a stab at it?
I have one thing to say about that, which is that I feel like if more people who are secretly living polygamous or polyamorous lives came out about that, and people knew how much it's happening in our own communities, it wouldn't feel as scary or as threatening as it did to me when I was a kid and was told the little bits that we learned in church history and stuff. It felt very horrible. And I still know Mormon women who are just aghast at the idea of, you know, eternal polygamy after death and whatever, they can't handle it. But I think if we knew who in our communities was practicing a life similar to that, we would have a lot more understanding of it.
Thank you so much, April. Jenifer?
From a writing standpoint, I can only say that thank you, Lindsay, because I think that this is my own opinion, but the most potentially dangerous thing I think that a writer can do is have an agenda. And so when I start a project, and particularly with this project, because I knew that it was it was in the hearts of, it's in the heart of our state, you know, it's in our hearts. I knew that I had to be very, very careful to immerse myself in as much information as I could, and then present people as best I could, without trying to say, because I think that as a writer, if that's what starts to happen, then you start to cheapen the experience. Is that can I say that? Cheapen the experience of the real people who live these lives, whose lives should be honored and respected, and understood as best we can. So that's, I'm hoping that comes through in the play. It was my hope in the writing, was just to come at with an open heart, using it, filling my head with as much information as my little brain could pack in there, but then writing from a place of openness as best I could.
Can I just interject and say one thing, that I was really shocked when I found out that you didn't have a background in Mormonism or knew this history, because it does so adequately encapsulate some of these experiences.
Completely agree with that. Thank you all for those answers. I'm going to be borrowing from one of the questions that was thrown into the chat and mixing it with another question I had. Cheryl Draper says, I love your ability to show the perspective of women, the pros and cons, as well as the complex emotions. Nobody ever wants to acknowledge that polygamy has in parentheses, aspects that are beneficial for women. Did you arrive at this idea through research? And what I would add to that is that I imagine a lot of outsiders would be surprised to hear that white Mormon women were second in the country to receive the right to vote. And that's perhaps because of misconceptions about women's place in early Mormonism, or perhaps because of perceptions of polygamy. And women in early Mormonism are frequently imagined as reductively as women in Islam are today. And can you provide context, yes, to the place of women and their power in the early Mormon society? What made Mormons' male and patriarchal leadership structure different than others? And what were the tools, both subversive and hegemonic, that white Mormon women were able to use to assert their power?
Lindsay. Or is that for you? I mean, I can give some historical context for that, and then I want to hear the first part of the question from you, Jenifer. But basically, Brigham Young did give more opportunities for some marginalized groups that they wouldn't have had elsewhere. For example, they had a really, complicated relationship with the Ute tribe that was here, and so some Utes actually did benefit from Mormon arrival, while others suffered very greatly. But same thing with women. There are some women that really benefited and some women didn't. But overall, like we talked about earlier, like April said, having sister wives isn't as bad as it sounds. The worst part is the man that's involved, right? And so depending on who that man is, that's going to affect your thing. I mean, if you're stuck with an abusive man, that's rough, but at least you're enduring it together. And that's kind of the worst case. If you have a husband that's, gone or whatever, this system actually benefited, women who probably, didn't have language for their sexuality at the time, lesbian women. We have journal entries of women that talk about loving their sister wives over their husbands. And so in the lonely, desolate frontier, this was a source of strength for a lot of people. Now, it was also the source of strife for a lot of people too. There are both stories, and they both show up here. But Brigham Young, because of this, because of the frontier system, because there's so many women spread out all over the territory, he encouraged women to get educated. He helped build schools and establishments that sent women to get their medical degrees. So women in Utah were very skilled at midwifery and other healing. And if you were really rural, you had to learn and study like Thomasonian herbal medicine yourself. So women really were leaders in their community. Now, of course, it was a sense of soft power, because at the end of the day, the men in the structures had overall hard power, and women knew that. But you do find very subversive ways that women sort of navigated these systems. Unfortunately for women in hierarchy, like Eliza R. Snow, she used it to oppress, in my opinion, other women. She had power. And that she, there's stories of her going down to poor southern Utah and telling them to retrench from all of their worldly things. And she's saying it in an imported dress from France, and the women are like, what do you want us to retrench from, the bread or the molasses? So it's complicated. But because of that, women had more opportunities than women on the East Coast in some ways for education, because they had to out of survival.
I won't pretend to be able to answer the first part of the question with any kind of insight, but I can talk a little bit about my process. I approached the project with a lot of questions. I came at it with the assumption that women, that LDS women of the period weren't stupid, nor were they sheep, nor were they lobotomized, they or brainwashed. I came at it with the assumption that they were women, and also understanding that polygamy has been a part of human history, and there must be a reason for that. That there must be something that societies, communities have found in that has kept this a part of humanity for millennia. So I had to figure out as best I could why, what were the reasons that would make this family unit work? And then what would be the pulls within that family unit? And because I don't have children, it was really, really hard. I had to talk to a lot of mothers and try to understand, what those struggles were. But I'm hoping that what comes through is this understanding that women are women, that there was no benefit for me in passing judgment on the system or the life. That there's no benefit to the play of me passing any kind of judgment on that. It was just my responsibility. I sought to try to understand as best I could, and then try to.
Okay. Did Jenifer finish her answer? It froze up a little bit on my
Yeah,
end.
I want to just make sure. We might be experiencing some technical difficulties. Well, it doesn't look like it's frozen anymore.
Yeah, it looks like we're back.
Okay.
It looks like enough people heard because there's no screaming in the chat. So I'll move on to the next question. And this one's for the actors. It's by Anushka Sen. Was this the first time you performed this over Zoom? Even if yes or no, how was this experience different? She was surprised by how utterly immersive it was and how much of a connection there was between the both of you.
I've got to interject. Aren't they magical? They're magical. I love these ladies. Sorry.
Magical.
Well, I have to say, thank God you thought that we were connecting, because this was hard. I've not done a Zoom performance. This is the first one. We read it last night for the first time, and it was hard. I know April was definitely trying too, just to like will my energy through the internet. But yeah, I don't know what April thinks.
I think it would have been more difficult if we hadn't ever performed it live, but the fact that we did and we were so connected to that performance, it just comes back.
Yeah.
Like I was having this strange experience tonight of like feeling I could like almost have ghost feelings of what my costume felt like. The feel of the fabric of my blouse and my hat and and there's this moment where I'm packing and Ruth says something about being alone, and I would take her face and pet her hair, and I wanted so badly to take Sarah's beautiful face and pet her hair, but I think it helps a lot to translate to a Zoom performance because we've had that live in-person experience.
And I just want to say that's not always a typical experience for an actor. There's definitely some plays that I never want to remember, and some that I don't even remember performing. This one though, like every once in a while, there'll be something that I'll say that I'll have I remember huge portions of the script just in my daily life, and I do remember that you say, "You have my heart," and you touch my face, and I remember that so clearly. Yeah, so it's easy, and especially when we know the rhythm so well, to know that's even if we're not getting exactly what we needed, that was still there. Yeah.
I thought somehow it seemed even more personal somehow this time. I can't put my finger on why exactly. Maybe it's just because the camera's focused on you two and we don't have any other distractions other than you two. But yeah, it just felt very, very much more personal to me.
Thank you everyone for staying for so long. I got 2 more questions for y'all, and then we'll call it a wrap. Unless y'all are diving in with more questions, then we'll see what we can squeeze in. And this was mentioned before by Lindsay. In May 2020, polygamy was essentially decriminalized in Utah. And it's clear that more than 100 years after the events portrayed in this play, polygamy is still something we're learning to navigate as a state. And why do you think this bill got signed into law in 2020, and what movements are happening within government and polygamous communities and in Utah to cause this change?
I can speak to it because I helped advocate for the bill. So I was supportive of this, and Shirley Draper, who I mentioned at Cherished Families, her and Alina Dargar both fought for this, along with a lot of great people, Deidre Henderson and Christina Rossetti. And the reason why so many of us got behind this, it was kind of controversial. And I think a lot of the listeners who follow me, who have heard me critique polygamy, felt kind of confused by that. Like, why would you push for this? Well, I push for it because I know the history of it, and seeing how the history interacted and how Mormons responded and how polygamists responded makes me think that we want to do something different. So the oppression, the government's approaches in the past, I think, have driven practices further underground to more harmful practices that are harder to regulate. And I believe that we as a society are in a place where we can handle diverse complexities. I mean, I'm hoping right now, I'm a little skeptical, but usually we want that. And so to allow people to live more honestly, like we talked about, is the first step. So let's just acknowledge the truth for what it is, not what we want it to be, but what it is, and then go from there. And so a lot of us felt like, you know, coming to the bill and decriminalizing it would draw people that have felt like it was dangerous to interact with outsiders. It would get them help. You know, I've known prophets like Warren Jeffs, who have used this fear of outsiders and government to further persecute and oppress their people. And so it is my opinion and the opinion of others that this is a new way to handle things. Now we bring it out and we start addressing the abuse, because the reality is not all polygamists are abusive. And that's still hard for me to like say out of my mouth as an LDS woman who hates this, but some people live it happily.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Lindsay. The last question I'll have for this evening is, in August 2020, the Salt Lake Tribune reported that for 3 years in a row, Utah was ranked worst state for women's equality. States were evaluated on workplace environment, education, health, and political empowerment. What lessons do you think this history teaches us about how to approach change in our present moment?
You don't do softball questions, do you, Willie? Not, not the easy ones.
No, I throw them out.
I think the thought that comes to my head right off, and my head, you know, you don't want to trust that, but the thought that just came into my head was that I think that it shows that change is hard, and we have a long way to go, and we're facing we are in a really pivotal, really exciting, really terrifying, and sometimes devastating point, I think, right now, today. And I think that what reports like that point out is that we need to be really we need to be willing to look around and see what we see, and do what we can in whatever way that we can to support the kind of change that we want to see. And I think that if we can do that, we're stronger for it. If we can't do that, then we get a lot of reports like that, you know, and that would make me sad.
I have an opinion on this and everything else. I just think there's a mindset that has lingered. When the church came over here, it was a frontier church. They were literally carving out the frontier and their own survival. And polygamy made a lot of made more sense then than I think it does now, for the reasons that they gave. And I think the role of women made more sense on a frontier. So in some ways, we're still stuck in a frontier mindset where we believe that women's duties are to stay home and watch their kids all the time and keep care of the home. And we haven't really moved on from that. And even the realities of women, I don't know a Mormon woman anymore that doesn't work, who doesn't share responsibilities. And yet the behavior has changed, but the mindset hasn't. And that's just one example of where we're at in Utah, where we need to confront the realities of what we live in now, not what we wish it was or what we wanted it to be, and come up with solutions that work. But to do that, we have to listen to people in the margins. We have to listen to women and their experiences. We have to listen to people who are different from us. And I'm finding that there's still, to use a Mormon parlance in Utah, we have a lot of pride. We don't want to listen and acknowledge that maybe some people's lives are challenging in ways that ours aren't, and they have solutions that might impact us. So I think that there's a humility problem in Utah with our inability to listen, and we're just in such old mindsets and patterns. I find myself still, having been immersed in this culture for so long, still doing things that are probably not in my best interest. And it's just old patterns that I think need to evolve and develop.
I also have something to share. I think something that, Lindsay, that you said about the decriminalization of polygamy bill is that it's bringing something to light and removing that fear from it. I think across the board in the whole country, we need to do that. If you're talking about just women's inequality in Utah, a simple thing would be, let's be transparent about our salaries when we start having, apply for jobs. That's simple things that we have, not just in Utah, but in the whole country, have been ingrained in us, that there's just certain things that are impolite, that we don't talk about, that we keep under the rug. I mean, my grandpa I don't know a thing about my Mormon roots because he wouldn't speak about it. That's how, kept off to the side that it was in our family. And, that's probably not even the worst, example of how other people's families live, and we've seen so much fear that is being peddled over the last little while. And that, I think that's what has to stop. We have to bring things to the light and be transparent. And I think this story is, these women were empowered because they had some autonomy and because they were able to freely live the way they felt was right. And then that got taken away. And that's something that we need to look at